everyone. Welcome to the F1 Time Portal, an F1 history podcast started by two Formula One nerds. I'm your host, Rosa.
And I'm your host, Luigi. And today we're talking about the season that has one of the most beautiful Formula One cars in history, 1954. So let's go. So today we start the 1954 season, the fifth year of the World Drivers' Championship.
There were some technical changes made to the F1 season for 1954. If you remember, the 1952 and 1953 season were run as Formula 2 competitions, which meant cars with smaller engines could also enter the competition.
So we pretty much saw the 54 was the end of the F2 era and the introduction, sort of the reintroduction of F1 again, with a new 2.5 litre limit on the engine size and the introduction or the return, I don't know if the word return is right, but the coming back of some big team names into Formula One. So the regulations were as follows, and remember, this is not an engineering pod. We're not going to be covering all the intricate details, but the cars were limited to a 2.5 litre engine or 750cc if they were supercharged. And there were no restrictions concerning weight or type of fuel. The big change was that Mercedes had returned to racing for the first time since the Second World War in 1952 in sports cars. So they did really well there. And by 1954, they felt they were ready for Formula One. But however, they didn't make their debut until the French Grand Prix, which is round 4 in July 1954. Nearly said 2024.
Well, 70 years ago. They also signed a big name. They signed Fangio to drive for them.
That's a massive name.
Yeah, that's massive.
The car they made their debut with was a car we're going to talk about quite a bit, to be honest, because it is that beautiful car, the W196. It was unique in that it had a straight 8-cylinder 2.5 litre engine capable of producing 272 brake horsepower. It featured fuel injection, which was quite innovative at the time, and of most interest, it had a full streamlined body.
You have spoken so much about this car, Luigi. Is this the car that you love the most out of all the F1 cars?
I think it is. And I'm not a Mercedes fan, by the way, so this isn't like a bias here. And when I say Mercedes fan, not current days Formula One, I mean Mercedes in general.
Yep.
It was just such an awesome looking car that was so different to everything else at the time. It had a full body that covered the entire shape of the car, including the front and the back wheels. And it was just so awesome and different. For those of you that have the time, this is worth stopping if you're doing anything dangerous like driving or riding or running, and look up the W196 Streamline F1 car, and you'll see what I'm talking about. It's a piece of art. It's aerodynamically so far ahead of anything else out there at the time.
Yeah. It actually looks like the Batmobile. Is it what the Batmobile was based on when the first movies came out for Batman? Because it's absolutely beautiful car.
Yeah, I don't know what came out first, actually. Good point.
Yeah,
it could have been based on the Batmobile.
Yeah. That would be funny if it was, but it's gorgeous. I actually did look it up myself, and I found that it was last sold in 2013 for $29.65 million US. I think it is the highest ever recorded sale of an old, like a vintage F1 car on record.
Actually, I'll go one level. I think at the time, I don't know if it's been surpassed. I think it was the highest price paid for a vehicle.
Oh, wow.
It may have been passed since then, but 2013 was not that long ago, and we're recording this in February 2024. So apparently only 14 of these cars ever existed, and only 10 are known to exist today.
So, Luigi, I did read somewhere, I don't know whether I came across it in my research, but it was banned. It ended up being banned. Do you know why? I don't know that. I haven't given you any notice to answer that question.
I don't know. I don't want to say that this car particularly was banned. And I don't know when the rules changed exactly, because like I said, we're not a rules podcast.
Yeah. Yep.
But what I do know that has been a factor of F1 for many, many, many years is that the wheels must be open and exposed. So the streamliner may have challenged the rule makers and made them think, well, this is getting too close to sports cars maybe, because sports cars have that full body chassis. And Formula One, the heartland of Formula One is open wheel racing. So I don't know if this was the car that triggered the banning or if that made them think, we need to differentiate these series. I'm not exactly sure. And that's not the point of this podcast, but it's still an interesting point.
Oh, okay. It is interesting. I mean, its record is spectacular. It started only 12 races and it scored 9 wins out of those 12 races.
Mini spoiler.
Yes, mini spoiler.
Yeah. But yeah. So it was the first car to have fuel injection, like I mentioned earlier, and its space frame chassis was so light that its power to weight ratio was not bettered until the turbo carbon fiber monsters of the mid 1980s. So that's pretty spectacular. That's how far ahead they were of everyone else in their power to weight ratios. There's something that you might find very painful, Rosa, which I have to share with you, being a very deep Formula One fan of Ferrari, is that in terms of old F1 cars, most Ferrari F1 cars are gone. Now, the reason I'm jumping to Ferrari team rather than talking about Mercedes is because Enzo Ferrari didn't have any nostalgia whatsoever, and his view was an old F1 Ferrari was a waste of space. So these old Ferrari F1 cars were basically used as a spare parts source or just trashed.
Oh, no. So when you say they're gone, you mean like actually destroyed and used for their parts?
There's some classic F1 Ferrari cars. In particular, I'll mention 61, the Shark Nose, which we'll get to. And it's such a beautiful car, and it was so awesome. None around. None. It's brutal. That car would have challenged that car would have been worth, in the 20 million US mark for sure.
Yeah. Well, he was a hard-nosed businessman, wasn't he?
It was a different time, wasn't it? So to this 1954 season, it wasn't just about the W196, and we will talk more about that, of course. But Lancia also made their debut later in the year with their D50.
Yeah, so this car was designed by the designer behind all the Alfa Romeos that were so strong in the 1930s. His name was Vittorio Jano. And that was the main reason Ascari signed with Lancia, because he thought that Jano would design a car that would win him another championship. Remember, his dad had a lot of success with Jano, and his dad also tragically lost his life racing in this car. So there was a lot of sentimentality for Ascari in joining Lancia that year.
Yeah, that's very interesting. And the thing is, Ascari was aware that a Mercedes was coming, and they had such success, as in Mercedes, with sports car racing, that he felt that he needed to join another team. And leaving Ferrari was a big change.
Yeah, that is huge, exactly.
Yeah.
But he really followed this designer, I think, to Lancia.
So the Lancia D50 did produce 260 brake horsepower, and it was a lighter and smaller car than most, and was designed in such a way that handling of the car remained the same despite the fuel loads decreasing. So quite an innovation for its time, like really taking into account handling.
So we have Fangio in the new Mercedes and Ascari in the new Lancia. So we're going to talk a lot about these two new signings as we go through the season. But fair to say the rules about which team to drive for were very loose this year. So we're going to see some interesting results. Yeah.
Yeah, it's that's what makes this season particularly interesting, actually. So most of the other sorry, Rosa.
That's okay. I just was going to say, I don't want to give away too many spoilers, but I think a record is set in this year that I don't think will ever, ever be challenged ever again.
I think I know the one you're talking about. We'll get there.
Yep.
Okay.
We'll get there.
So most of the other teams' cars remained largely unchanged. So Ferrari started the season with their Tipo 625, which was primarily identical to the Tipo 500, which I had huge success with in 53, apart from the enlarged engine, and it generated 230 brake horsepower. And I think this is the car that Ascari refused to drive in the last race, remember?
Yes, he did. Yes.
Yeah.
It was too slow.
Yeah, and he was like, I'm out of here, and I'm joining Lancia, a team
Yeah.
that doesn't even have a car yet.
Yeah.
At Maserati, they developed their strong 1953 car with the now infamous 250F. Now, this is what's amazing. This is also a very beautiful F1 car, and a lot of people see this as their favourite car. I preferred the Streamliner, the Mercedes one, but it was a 6-cylinder engine and developed 240 brake horsepower.
I also Googled this car. It is actually a classic. It's a classic car of this era. And I did find that in 2014, it sold for 4.6. So it got nowhere near the dollars that the W196 got to. But yeah, we've got 2 classic cars in one season.
I think that's a really, if you have that sort of spare change, that's the money.
Yeah.
That's the money. Because that car's got to be worth a lot more than 4.6. There's a lot of people still talking about the 250F as their favourite, most beautiful car and all that sort of stuff. So, Gordini, for reasons of economy, simply increased their engine to 2.5 litres and were essentially identical to their 1953 F2 car. So, there you go.
That's a bit boring. Yeah.
Yeah.
Don't think it does them much good during the season either.
Where's the love? You know,
I know.
All these Italian teams are going for it. They're like leaving the sport like Alpha did in 53. 53 or 52? 52.
52.
The French teams are just plodding along, aren't they? In the background.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah.
Yep.
Considering they won the very first race in 1906, I think. You know, they're really not living up to their reputation.
But they had their dash. Yeah, they had their dash.
Yeah. So the British teams continued with ongoing limited success and modified engines. And these teams included HWM and Connaught and Vanwall.
So Moss finally gave up on driving British, and he bought a Maserati 250F for this season and pretty much entered as a privateer. Although I think Maserati started giving him some support at the end of the year, but this decision would be a massive turning point in his career. So that will be interesting.
So he finally starts to come out of Hawthorne's shadow.
Yep. So we've got some big moves this season. We've got Ascari leaving Ferrari to go to Lancia, new team. Fangio left Maserati to go to Mercedes, new team. Gonzalez was lured back to Ferrari to replace Ascari from Maserati. So who is driving for Maserati this year?
Well, before I tell you that, I sort of know, but I'm not going to say, and there's reasons for that in a second. But Gonzalez going back to Ferrari, I just got Gerhard Berger vibes because Berger drove for Ferrari 2 times. And it just felt like, and Gonzalez was also a bit like a Berger character, gets the wins here and there, performs really well, but it's just not a number one.
No,
but,
he was never the main driver, was he?
No, and we're talking late 80s, early 90s, you know, and then he became a teammate to Senna with McLaren. He was never going to be number one there. Yeah, so who's driving for Maserati this year? The answer is, this is going to sound brutal, and again, we've talked about this before, no disrespect, but sort of nobody. So the answer is a little bit of Fangio at the start, but then the rest were not big names and not really players in the championship, which is why I'm not even going to mention them. And when I look at the championship season, it's just Fangio is noticeable because he's a player, and then there's like 7 or 8 drivers, and then the next Maserati driver.
All right. So for 1954, yeah, that is a bit brutal, but we don't have time to talk about everyone who raced in every
that's right.
season in F1. So, yeah, we still have 9 races. We've got the Spanish GP returning to the calendar after missing for 2 years due to budget issues. And we've still got, this year the best 5 of 9 scores count towards the championship. So in previous years, it was best 4 of 8 races. So I think because we've got one extra race, you get one extra score added to your World Driver Championship tally. So that's interesting.
And as the championships get longer, that changes too.
Yeah, that changes.
In a long time future, but yeah.
So the Dutch GP was scheduled to run in June, but that was cancelled due to no money for the race. So the organisers decided not to hold the race. And the Monaco GP is still missing from the calendar, mainly due to, again, the driver regulations not being finalised. So the Monaco Association, whatever they're called, Automobile Association de Automobiles, they're playing hardball, aren't they? They're going like you get proper regulations in place, otherwise you're not coming to drive. I think they held a couple of like sports car races, but no Formula One.
I don't understand because it's not like they've got other tracks available to them. They're like, Monaco's small, right? It's like so many kilometres one way and so many kilometres the other. Not many, like no more than double digit, that's for sure, if not less than 10.
No.
And excuse my ignorance, I've never been there. But it's so funny to see them playing hardball because now Monaco can play that game because they've got all this history, reputation. They're seen as a core to Formula One. They're missing in most of these seasons. They're not there, but they're acting like they're the best.
I mean, arguably, it is one of the most famous GP circuits that we've got happening in today's world of GP. So it will be interesting how it actually creates that legacy because, you're right. It's been missing for the last 3 years, I think.
It's you know what this is? This is a lesson in marketing. Start off with that pretentious attitude and eventually it'll stick. It'll stick.
Yeah, that's right.
But having said that, for every Monaco wannabe that tried this strategy that we don't even remember or talk about, there's probably 99 of them. There's only one that pulled this off.
Yeah.
So we're ready for the first race of the season, the Argentinian Grand Prix. So are you ready, Rosa?
I am.
Okay. Jan 17, so early in the year, 87 laps, 17 drivers and a 4x3x4 grid formation. Now, Ascari, who had signed for Lancia, was missing from the opening race because the Lancia car basically wasn't ready.
Italian team, right?
Yeah.
They don't really like deadlines.
Yeah,
they're very fluid.
They're trying the Monaco strategy. We're not ready.
When we're ready, we'll be there.
Yeah, don't call us, we'll call you. Yeah.
That's right.
So Fangio, having signed for Mercedes, still started the race because Mercedes also wasn't ready, but he borrowed a Maserati 250F.
So why didn't Ascari do something similar? Like I'm sure Ferrari, or maybe not Ferrari, but I don't know, maybe Maserati would have given him a car.
I don't understand.
Maybe he was too loyal.
Maybe. You know what? It's weird because Fangio had his eyes on the prize. If I want to be world champion, I need to get as many points as I can. You know? So
they did. I did read that Ascari was a fiercely loyal and, he just had a lot of integrity. So he probably didn't think it was right to go and race for another team early in the season.
Yeah,
and maybe he thought the car would be ready. Yeah, I don't know.
Yeah, interesting. Makes me wonder, did he go and watch? Probably not. I doubt it. I really doubt it. So Fangio was basically the only driver to trouble the pace of the Ferraris that were really setting a scorching speed. So Farina, took pole 1 minute 44.8, followed by Gonzalez 0.1 behind, then Fangio and Hawthorne rounding out the front row.
So that pole position by Farina is a record for the oldest pole, and it's still a record today. He was 47 years and 79 days. So we do have someone on the current grid who might actually challenge that record. He's got a little way to go, though. Fernando Alonso. How old is he? He's 40, isn't he? He's 41?
40. No. I think it's 42 or 43, actually. Or 42.
Okay.
He's in that range, right? He's got 5 years. Is that 2029?
Yeah.
It'd be nice if he got it in 2030. It's a nice round number.
Good number, yes.
Yeah. So that record, I don't think it's ever going to be broken. I know science is going to get awesome in making people fitter and stronger and faster.
Yep.
But, geez, good on you, Farina.
Yeah.
Locking it in.
Good on you.
Yeah. So Farina actually converted that pole position and leapt into the lead at the race start, with Fangio, Hawthorn and Gonzalez following. By lap 15, Gonzalez had charged through to the front and Ferrari were in command, 1, 2, 3. So pretty good start for Ferrari. And remember, they dominated 52, 53. And here they were, 1, 2, 3 at the start of this race. So the race was in cruise mode until lap 32, when heavy rain fell suddenly and it made for a very slippery track. So unfortunately, our friend, Speedy Gonzalez, lost it. And by the time he regained control, he had slipped all the way down to 4th place.
No.
Yeah. Farina stopped for a visor.
Hang on.
I don't get that.
What do you mean? I don't get
it.
Didn't they have visors?
Well,
okay.
Did they even have helmets at this stage?
I think they did. Oh, maybe they were still wearing those cloth things at this stage.
Yeah, to protect themselves from head injury.
Yeah.
So, visor. I mean, interesting, isn't it? So he stopped for a visor. So he felt it was worth stopping for a visor, which is a point in itself. So Hawthorn found himself in the lead of the race, maybe visorless, but not for long, as Fangio passed him for the lead a couple of laps later. Now remember, Fangio's driving a Maserati that he probably hasn't had a huge amount of time in because it's a stopgap car. It was then Hawthorn's turn to lose control in the challenging conditions, which let Gonzalez and Farina through. So Fangio was clearly superior in the wet at this stage.
That's a lot like many other champion drivers. They're all good in the wet, aren't they? A bit like Senna.
Yeah, I mean, Senna was famously known for that. Quite a few other drivers too, but he's the one that sort of comes to mind, isn't he?
Yes, yep.
So then the rain stopped, and on the drying track, Gonzalez and Farina both caught and passed Fangio. Then the rain came back again, and Fangio duly caught and passed them both again and retook the lead.
Well, rain always makes a race interesting, doesn't it? And Luigi, remind me, do we have wet weather tread here, do you think? I think we saw that in the past season, so I think they must be using wet weather treads.
Something's coming. Something's coming, but not this race for some reason. For some reason, not this race, but will come. It'll come.
Okay.
You picked the right year to ask the question. Finally, you've asked it a couple of times now.
I have.
So Hawthorn spun again because it was rainy and actually was disqualified for getting outside assistance. So it's funny how the FIA has certain rules. You know, they won't black flag races when the spectators get killed, but they will black flag you if you get outside assistance. It's like, oh, whoa, you can't do that. So by lap 61, wet weather conditions got even worse. So Fangio stopped for specially cut rain tyres.
Oh, what does that mean? Do we know what that means?
We don't. We've just got those words. And as you may recall, Rosa, we've got a bit of a rule that if we've heard about it for the first time in this Grand Prix booked by Mike Lang, then in our minds, it's the first time it happened. Now, it may have happened earlier and Mike Lang didn't say anything, but he felt the need to say it this time. So I think these were the first rain tyres.
And we don't really know what specially cut rain tyres actually means. I mean, you'd figure perhaps they would had a deeper tread or something.
Well, I think
just imagine the mechanics in the pits cutting them up deeper, like just their normal tyres.
Yeah, or just cutting extra crisscrosses with the tread because the tyres all had a normal tread back then. There were no slick tyres. So they just gave it extra tread. So cut means, who knows, something like
deeper?
that.
Who knows,
I think more across. That's my visual. Because if they go deeper, they might go too close to the
Yeah,
the
that's
tube
true.
or whatever it's called.
They would have
Yeah.
had tubes. They would have had tubes in this time.
Yeah. Now, this is where the things get very interesting because Ferrari's team manager, Ugolini, protested
Not
that
him
more than
again.
the permitted three mechanics, yeah, he does come up, doesn't he? More than the
Yes.
permitted three mechanics had worked on Fangio's Maserati.
Oh,
Makes me wonder, the team must have been the Maserati team, right? Wouldn't have been the Mercedes team. They wouldn't have been there
yes.
yet. Yeah. So just
No,
checking,
it
right?
was definitely
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. So Ferrari were very confident that because they had seen more than the permitted three mechanics to work on his car, that their protest would be upheld. And the team hung out a slow down signal to Farina Gonzalez, who at that point were first and second in the race.
Oh no. I can
Yeah.
what? First of all, what the hell is the team manager doing watching Maserati? Like, wasn't he watching the race? Like, what's he doing? He's spying on the other team. And secondly, why would you tell your drivers to slow down if they're first and second?
They not only slowed
hope.
down, they slowed right down. They let
my
Fangio
gosh.
pass with ease.
Oh no.
So much so that Fangio went on to basically win the race by over a minute.
Oh no.
So, despite this is the key word of this race. Despite Ugolini arguing with officials and taking his protest to the FIA, the win was Fangio's.
Of course it was. Like,
Yeah.
I have since reading your script, I have tried to find out more about this incident. I think Ferrari fans or officials have probably scrubbed the internet clean of this very embarrassing incident because there's nothing. Like, I couldn't find anything. But they were just so confident of their appeal being upheld, and they made a decision based on that. Like, that is a classic Ferrari, pretty pretentious move and a massive stuff up.
It just shows that it's in the DNA of Ferrari. It really is. Yes. Ferrari have been known to do things like this. And it's like, wow, this is where it started.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it didn't start. We've had a couple of other incidences before this.
Well, Ugolini was, I think, wasn't Ugolini also the one that threatened to not race his cars because the sports car Ferrari was disqualified during I think it was him as well. Like, he's just a bit of likes to drop the mic.
Yeah.
Okay, so at the end of this race, we have Fangio in the Maserati on 8 points, Farina in the Ferrari on 6 points, Gonzalez in the Ferrari on 5 points. I'm going to mention Trintignant because I think he does something a bit later. He's on 3 points. Mm-hmm. He also was driving the Ferrari.
So to the next race, which is like almost 6 months later because that first Argentinian race was in January 17. So I think they're allowing for the ships to travel the cars back to Europe. So we're in June 20. There's non-championship races in between.
And also the one that we don't talk about.
Yes. I've wiped that off my mind. So much so that there may have been 5 IndyCar races and I have no idea.
Yeah.
As we know, we don't talk about it, but we talk about it.
We don't talk about it.
Yeah. 36 laps, 14 drivers, and a 3x2x3 grid formation for this Belgium Grand Prix.
Yes. And very interestingly, behind the 14 drivers, a 15th car would start the race. A Maserati of Emmanuel de Graffenried was ready for the start to film authentic race footage for the upcoming movie The Races, starring Kirk Douglas. So
I didn't know that.
Like,
I want to watch this movie.
Yeah, I've never seen the movie.
Yeah.
But could you imagine, I know that we've had some movie footage being filmed in 2023 with Brad Pitt, but that I think he did that on a practice day, not during the actual start of the actual Grand Prix. So that is just unbelievable. But
Yeah,
Yes.
and I went to somewhere early. I went to the 1966 movie Grand Prix, and
Yes.
they did something similar, but I don't think it was during the actual race. It was during qualifying. But
Right.
the mere fact I've not even heard of this movie, The Races, makes me think it may
Yeah.
not be that great. But
No.
Kirk Douglas is a bit of a name.
He was big. Yeah, he was big back in the day.
Yeah, interesting. So anyway, Ascari and Villarace were still missing because Lancia was still not ready. So Fangio, knowing that the Mercedes was delayed, had agreed to sign with Maserati until the Mercedes was ready. So Fangio earned the prize. Qualifying showed Fangio dominating with Maserati, followed by Gonzalez and Farina in the Ferraris on the front row.
Apparently, Fangio only showed up on the second day in his Maserati, probably because he had to sign a deal with them. But he managed to pulverise his own track record. So that was set in 1951 in the all-conquering Alfa Romeo 159. But he qualified with the fastest time of 4 minutes 22.1. So, yeah, he broke his own track record. Yeah, it was interesting. Gonzalez I also did read that Gonzalez was very pleased with the handling of his Ferrari, but Farina was not. He was not happy with the setup at all. So it makes you wonder whether at this stage the team are already setting up the car for, Gonzalez, and Farina's he's in his late 40s here. So they may have been, probably not really setting the car up for him, given that he was probably going to exit the sport.
Well, let's not forget that when Farina did achieve what he did, which was amazing by winning the 1950 championship, he was considered past his prime at that stage.
Yes.
So here we are in 54, like essentially 5 years later, and he's arcing up, and his young teammate Gonzalez, who's doing a pretty good job winning races and right up there pretty much all the time, he was only about 32. So a relative young gun and a very similar age to Ascari, actually. So it wouldn't surprise me if Ferrari were looking at Gonzalez as their future because they'd lost their star Ascari to Lancia.
Yes.
So on race day, looks like Ferrari made the right call because Gonzalez leapt into the lead ahead of Farina and Hawthorne, who qualified fifth. And then Fangio was way down in 8th place. So a bit of a bad start for Fangio. During the first lap, there was some drama as, again, we don't profess to be excellent pronunciation people, as Miers in the Maserati, who qualified 12th or 14th, had a flaming Maserati, and it turns out that a tank cap had not been shut properly and fuel had spilt onto the exhaust pipe. So it would have looked awesome, but scary at the same time, especially in those days, because fire meant fire. There's no extinguishers. Yeah. I doubt the marshals had anything. No. So luckily, Mears only had minor burns from that.
I don't even think the fire retardant suits came in. I think they even didn't come in until perhaps in the 70s, like late 70s. So
nuts, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. Which is probably why they didn't want people wearing seatbelts here either. So they wanted to be thrown from the car so they didn't just sort of, catch fire and stay in the car.
So by end of an eventful lap 1, Farina was now leading because Gonzalez had engine problems. So I'm going to mention a driver called Swatters who also retired on lap 1. He qualified 14th out of 14 drivers and he had a time of 4 minutes 54.2 versus pole time of 4 minutes 22.1. So quite a bit behind the others. And so why am I mentioning him?
Why are you mentioning him? Yeah.
Yeah, only because the novelty of it. His Ferrari was yellow. I couldn't be bothered looking it up why. But I guess Enzo did give Hawthorne a green Ferrari once.
Yes. He gave him a British Racing green one.
Yeah, so...
Interesting.
Not sure.
Okay.
So all this while, Fangio was pressing forward and amazingly by 10, he took the lead until his visor strap broke. So what did he do? He threw it away.
Of course he did. He probably hated racing it with it on. A bit like in Adelaide, you have to ride a bike with a helmet. Everyone hates it.
Yeah. Australia, not just Adelaide. So anyway,
Oh, okay.
so Fangio, for some reason, getting rid of this helmet strap caused him to fall back a few positions. But by lap 15, Fangio had recaught Farina, and then it was Farina's turn for some bad luck, and he retired with ignition problems. So Fangio went on to finish unchallenged for the win. So at this stage, Hawthorn, who was not really great in the race, was called in to hand over his Ferrari to Gonzalez. But this was not to be long lasting. For the very next lap, Gonzalez was back in the pits. It turns out that the exhaust fumes were drifting into the cockpit and was causing the drivers to slowly lose consciousness. So Gonzalez noticed immediately and wondered why Hawthorn took so long to realise himself.
Wow. Yes, I did read that apparently a collapsed Hawthorn had to be lifted out of his car.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. Yes.
Yeah. Wow. And Gonzalez realised straight away. That's why he's a number one. Yeah.
Yep.
So this left Trintignant, who qualified 6th, up to 2nd place, and Moss, who persisted gallantly, found himself in 3rd place, 1 lap behind. And Rosa, I'll let you say the next thing.
His first podium.
Yeah,
wow.
You have a love affair with Moss. I don't know why, but you do.
Well, it's not that I have a love affair. I'm just interested in how he just becomes such a big name in the sport, given his very poor start. But yeah, there you go. His first podium as a privateer in a Maserati in an Italian car.
Yeah. Biting swallowing his pride, his British pride.
Yes. British parochialism. Okay, so the World Driver Championship standings then are Fangio still driving the Maserati on 17 points, Trintignant in the Ferrari on 9 points, Gonzalez in the Ferrari on 6.5, and Farina in the Ferrari on 6.
We don't think Trintignant is a player, do we?
No, we don't. No.
This is the time to sell Trintignant shares.
Yes. Yes.
Okay, so we're up to the French Grand Prix on July the 4th. It's a 61-lap race with 21 drivers and a 3x2x3 grid formation. This is a big race. We welcome Mercedes to the fold, and all eyes were on them as they made their debut. Again, I think we mentioned earlier, if you can safely pause this podcast and look up the 1954 Streamliner Mercedes F1 car, I think you'll find it is one of the most beautiful Formula One cars in history, and you'll understand why it was called the Streamliner. It was really well ahead of its time in terms of aerodynamic thinking, and I will suggest if you can look up French Grand Prix Mercedes F1 car, you'll see the two Mercedes on the front row with another car. And it's like looking at two different eras of racing on the front row.
Yeah, well, it's interesting that they were so well ahead of their time in terms of aerodynamic thinking back then, because their aerodynamic concept in 2020, was it 2022, Luigi, or was it 2021? Was a humongous failure.
2022, when the new regulations came in, yeah.
Yeah, they decided to not have any side pods, which was just a massive failure.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
So, so it comes down to the fact that you can have a 1:8 scale model of this car for how much?
Oh, yes, I did look at this. You can actually buy a 1:8 scale model of the W196 for 20,000 Australian dollars. I reckon we should get a couple, Louis.
I was going to say, look, you know what? If this podcast becomes really big, maybe.
Yeah. I want one.
It would be cool, but why does it have to be 20,000? Why can't we just buy a cheap plastic one? You know, that $20,000 one's probably made of the space frame chassis and all that sort of stuff.
Yes.
You know? Yeah.
Be amazing.
So to the race itself, The crowd were not disappointed as Fangio set the fastest time of 2 minutes 29.4 and he set a new lap record of 200.042 kilometers per hour for the track, which was, I think, a record at the time. And it may have been the first time that speed had been achieved as an average lap time. I'm not sure. So the second place was Fangio's teammate Kling, 2 minutes 30.4, and Ascari in the Maserati next. So when I talked about those cars on the front row, it was Ascari on the front row, his rival, Ascari and Fangio, stuck in the 1950s with these space-age looking Mercedes cars on the front row with him that look like they're from 2000 and something, you know?
Yeah.
So pretty remarkable. Yeah.
Yep.
So Gonzalez was fourth in the Ferrari. And yes, I said Ascari, the Lancia driver, in the Maserati.
Oh, so he's finally done it. Better late than never.
Took a long time, didn't it? And he got in the front row.
Yeah.
Not bad.
Wow. And he's also in a Maserati. So he didn't go back to Ferrari then.
I wonder if Maserati said, we've lost Fangio. While your car's not ready, how about you come into this car? And he did good.
Yeah.
He did good. So unfortunately, Farina was injured from a recent unrelated accident. So the team manager of Lancia realised that there would be no Italians driving. So he released Ascari and Villaraci to drive for Maserati, which is amazing, isn't it? For that parochial nature to not break contracts, but allow relief of contract. It's probably a better word to use, right? Right?
Yes. Yep. Yeah, and for them to drive for a rival team.
Yeah.
You know, they were both Italian teams. So
yeah. Probably all based in Maranello. Like as we found out. Yeah. Maserati was there, Ferrari was there, probably Alfa. Yeah.
Yes.
So on race day, Fangio, Kling and Ascari all made great starts. However, unfortunately, Ascari retired towards the end of the first lap due to transmission issues.
So he gets in a car finally and he doesn't even, not a good start for him, is it? No.
Yeah. So by lap 5, Fangio was comfortably in control with Kling second and Herman in the other Mercedes harassing the third place driver, which was Gonzalez in the Ferrari. However, Gonzalez eventually retired on lap 13 due to an engine issue. However, Herman was not to enjoy third place for long as his engine also expired one lap later, not before he achieved fastest lap though.
This sounds like a very grueling race. Like it's really hard on these cars.
Yeah, seems like it. So by half distance, Fangio and Kling had a commanding lead. And by lap 36 don't forget it's a 61 lap race, the high attrition type of race meant that only 5 cars were still circulating. So Birra in the Maserati was in third place, up from 6th on the qualifying, and Maison in the Ferrari was 4th, up from 12th. And then it started to rain.
Okay, some more action like we need it.
Yeah. So Birra's goggles steam up and Manzon caught and passed him for third place. Really?
Okay,
his technology.
His goggles.
The goggles.
Goggles. That is funny.
I know.
It's actually funny that's what they included in the history books. His goggles steamed up.
Don't they have little holes on the side or on the bottom? Do you know what I mean?
I don't know. Maybe holes weren't invented yet. I don't know.
I know, yeah. So the rain stopped and Birra regained his third place because obviously the goggles stopped steaming. Could he have just flicked them up a little bit? You know, like when you go swimming, you lift them up a little bit and they let the welder out. So anyway, Birra regained his third place only to run out of petrol on the last lap. And Birra was literally passed as he was coasting on the line.
Gosh, this guy's having absolutely no luck. First his goggles steam up, then he runs out of petrol.
Yeah.
Poor guy.
It's worth noting that 5th place was Villaraci as the relief driver in Maserati, 3 laps behind, and Berra in the Gordini was in 6th place, only 5 laps behind. So Mercedes win their debut race with a 1-2, And there was actually speculation that Kling held back and respected team orders, which I actually don't believe.
No, I don't believe that either. And what happened, and I think our British driver Moss, what's happened with him? He didn't enter the French GP, and Hawthorn qualified in 8th, but his car blew up. So, yeah, our British drivers not having a good Grand Prix.
True. So how's the championship looking?
Well, Fangio now is on 25 points and he's driven for Maserati and Mercedes. So he's won races for both of those teams this season.
And that's not going to happen too often.
I don't think that's ever going to happen again, Luigi. Don't you think?
Probably not allowed.
Well, maybe it would be allowed. Like, I don't know when that rule stops, but definitely not now. Trintignant in the Ferraris on 9 points, Gonzalez in the Ferrari on 6.5, and Farina in the Ferrari on 6. So Fangio's just, running away with it.
Smashing it. And if you haven't sold your Trintignant shares, geez, this is like, you're crazy now. Listen to me. Sell.
We're just going to stop it there and do the rest of 1954 in the next episode. See you then. We have a Patreon.
Yay, we're a professional podcast now. So it means a lot to us if you are able to support the F1 Time Portal podcast.
For a small monthly fee, you not only get ad-free podcast content, you will also receive special episodes that are exclusively uploaded for our Patreon financial supporters.
We promise at least 2 additional exclusive episodes each month aligned to the decade we are up to in the show.
And you will also be able to make suggestions about any special episodes you may want us to research and present. We can't promise that we can do all of them, but we will consider them.
So, if that sounds like an entertainment bargain to you, go and sign up at patreon.com/F1 Time Portal today.
If you're enjoying our podcast, please tell your friends and non-F1 friends alike.
Yeah, and don't forget to rate us 5 stars or whatever highest is available on the podcast platform that you use.
We have a range of social media handles for you to connect with fellow listeners, so look up F1 Time Portal on all the usual platforms.
Or visit us at www.f1timeportal.com or email us at f1timeportal@gmail.com.
We would like to give credit to our primary reference materials, a series of books called Grand Prix by Mike Lang.
We also use many other written and digital references, which are in our show notes.
Thank you for your support.
Thank you.